Let not your heart be troubled. You are listening to the Sean Hannity Radio Show podcast. My friends at MyPillow, my buddy Mike Lindell told me he was coming out with a brand new product. It's called the new mattress topper. So I got the new mattress topper immediately, and I've been sleeping on it now for a couple of months. It's the best thing you've ever felt in your life. Now, you literally have MyPillow foam for support. It's a transitional foam that helps relieve pressure points, and it's ultra soft, patented temperature regulating cover. And I got to tell you, it has a 10-year warranty, a cover that's washable and dryable. It's made in the USA, backed by their 60-day unconditional money-back guarantee. Once you try this new mattress topper, you put it right over your mattress, you will never sleep better. And right now, you, my radio listeners, you're going to save 30% off when you go to MyPillow.com and use the promo code TOPPER. And by the way, Mike will also give you 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free. All right, so try MyPillow.com, promo code TOPPER. Promo code TOPPER for this great deal and the best night's sleep you ever had. All right, glad you're with us. We are in the swamp. We are in Washington, D.C. Thank you, my friend Scott Shannon. Talking to him yesterday. Write down our toll-free telephone number. Even though we are here in the sewer, you remain hopefully in the heartland and normal America, because this is not a normal town. It's 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to get to all of it. And I'm going to start by saying, and this is hard for people to understand when I say this, none of this that is unfolding today, or none of this that has been unfolding in this whole process with Judge Kavanaugh in any way, shape, manner, or form surprises me. Sadly, I understand the tactics of the left in America. When there was an opening for Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, again, I play what happened to Robert Bork. I play what happened to Clarence Thomas. As we have now been peeling the onions away, the layers of the onions, based on the stories of Professor Ford and Miss Ramirez, and now this client of Michael Avenatti, the new face of the Democratic Party, along with Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. None of this shocks me. I'm going to give you all the details, but I want to backtrack 1 second here because, and some of you have heard me tell this story before, but it really is appropriate now. And I had mentioned how when I was a local host in Atlanta, that all of a sudden I'm on the air and the story breaks. Richard Jewell, who we all thought was a hero, he fits the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, came out with a headline. He fits the profile of a lone bomber. And one of the reasons they cited, the main reason they cited, after all, he lives with his mother. And I'm like, so he lives with his mother. Maybe it's not conventional. Most kids move out at some point. They go out on their own. How do you know he wasn't taking care of his elderly mother? His mother was sick, or maybe the mother was sick and nobody knew it, and he was the only one that would take care of her. It hardly fit the profile in my mind of a lone bomber. I didn't know at the time. Richard Jewell was listening to the program, gave me one of his first interviews after he'd been exonerated. But, I mean, this guy went through hell. I would argue he probably died at a younger age. He passed away some years ago as a result of this. It taught me a valuable lesson that has stayed with me and has literally, it has helped me be a better person and a better radio host and talk show host, both on and a television host. Because I'm watching instance after instance after instance where there are people in this country that will say and do anything when it comes to power. You know, some people say to me, Hannity, during 2016, you got kind of repetitive. 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty, lowest labor participation rate, 40 years, the worst recovery since the 40s, lowest home ownership rate in 51 years, first president never to reach 3% GDP, took on more debt than all presidents before him combined. I did it for a reason. I wanted everybody to have those facts in their head because I knew they'd never get it anywhere else. And that election was too important. Too many millions of our fellow citizens were suffering. Now, in the course of this career of mine, I have stood apart from many others. This isn't about patting Sean Hannity on the back. It's about a lesson that I've learned that I think that I'm trying to impart to you. I have learned that every election season, which is why I can go back to, 1998. If you elect Republicans, black churches are going to burn by the Missouri Democratic Party, a radio ad. We can go back to the 2000 race, the James Byrd ad. It's like my father was killed all over again because George W. Bush didn't support hate crimes, but George W. Bush did support the death penalty for the horrific, evil murder of an innocent man that was dragged to his death. But that was an ad. I can go back and play Al Gore saying over and over and over again, Republicans have the wrong agenda for African Americans. They don't even want to count you in the census. And Hillary Clinton, the altering of the cadence and voice depending on audiences. And I've summed it up this way and told you often that every 2-4 years, you're going to hear Republicans are racist, Republicans are sexist, Republicans are misogynist, they're xenophobic, they're homophobic, Islamophobic. They want dirty air and water because they don't support environmental extremism, and they want to kill your kids and throw Granny over the cliff. You have a Paul Ryan lookalike that wants to throw Granny over the cliff. Every Supreme Court nomination now, there is a lot at stake. And by the way, back to the 2 to 4 years, if you call somebody a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, Islamophobe, if you say they want to throw your grandmother over a cliff because, let's say there was a big debate in the Clinton years, reducing the rate of growth of Medicare, meaning you're increasing Medicare spending 7% a year, every year for 7 years, but because you're not increasing it 10% a year, they'd call it a cut. And they say you hate old people and you want to kill old people. That is, and it's gotten worse, as we now see today. That is your modern Democratic Party. This party now has been hijacked by the radical left. There are no more moderates in the Democratic, no more Scoop Jacksons, no more moderate Democrats. Joe Lieberman became too moderate for his own party and was thrown out of his own party in Connecticut, ended up running as an independent, winning. Joe Lieberman, I've known him for years. He's probably the nicest guy you've ever met in your life and probably one of the smartest guys as it relates to defense of Israel, Middle East, foreign affairs that I've ever known. And he's a tough guy. He didn't support Obama's deal. He likes the president that he moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. So with that said, we have now spent how many days going over these 36, 35-year-old allegations against Brett Kavanaugh from when he was in high school and then was for his freshman year in college. And each case individually has been debunked over time. I'll give you the first example. Every single witness, and we're not even sure if Professor Ford's going to show up tomorrow. I hope she does. I've supported her right to be heard. For the first time, actually, in my adult life, I think Republicans have finally gotten it right. They took the allegation rightly seriously. They did their due diligence and investigation. They had great sensitivity, were totally accommodating in every way they can. And so, but in the interim, they also did their job. The Senate Judiciary Committee did. And they investigated Professor Ford's allegations against Judge Kavanaugh for the last week. And they learned the identities finally because Dianne Feinstein never shared it with them. She had it since July. All the Democrats knew. This is now this was a strategy that they decided upon, that they were going to spring this on the Republicans, on the country, and on the last minute. And just like in a political year, how horrible is it? Or if you're called a racist, it's horrible. How do you defend yourself if it's not true? Because then the ads come out a week or 2 weeks before an election. You're on defense for the last 2 weeks of the election. That's why we call them October surprises. And afterwards, there's always doubt in people's minds. What kind of people are willing to say and do anything to win an election? What kind of people are willing to, I'm talking about the Democratic Party now, not the accusers here, to be clear. What kind of party holds back this kind of information? You meet with Judge Kavanaugh, you don't bring it up. You have a hearing with Judge Kavanaugh, nobody brings it up. You turn it into a circus. This is what this part, they're not talking about making a better economy, creating jobs, a safer America. None of these things are coming out of their mouth. So anyway, the Senate Judiciary Committee does their due diligence, investigating Dr. Ford's allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. They finally learned the name of the four people, the identities of the people that were alleged to be at the party where the alleged abuse took place. And what we find out is the committee reaches out to every person, gives them an opportunity to conduct a confidential interview. And all four of the people, Mark Judge, Mr. Smythe, Miss Kaiser, all denied having any knowledge of any party matching Professor Ford's description, which all bolstered Mr. Kavanaugh's denials. Then we have another allegation pop up again last minute. And in this particular case, by Miss Ramirez. And she makes a claim telling the New Yorker how this ever made it in the press. That's a separate issue, except that the press is basically the media outlet, the political arm, if you will, of the Democratic Party. And they're in a great alliance. And right now the alliance is hate Trump, destroy Trump, stop Trump, whatever you can do. Never let Trump succeed. And he's succeeding in spite of it. And Ramirez herself is not totally sure if Kavanaugh was the perpetrator. Why does that then get printed? And according to the New Yorker, by her own words, quickly got inebriated at the party. And she told the New Yorker that she was foggy and slurring her words. And then she acknowledged that she has significant memory gaps from the evening. And then the New York Times, they said, quote, they had interviewed several dozen people over the past week, all in an effort and attempt to corroborate Miss Ramirez's story. And they could find nobody, not one person with firsthand knowledge and of any of these events she's describing. And Miss Ramirez, we find out from the New York Times, herself was contacting former Yale classmates, asking if they recalled the incident, and told some of them she couldn't be certain that it was Kavanaugh who is the one that exposed herself. Remember, she took 6 days trying to figure out, was it him, not him. Now I'm confident it's him, but calling around, asking people, do you remember, was it him? So that is extremely problematic. But yet this is what we have debased the entire process in debate in this country. All civility is gone. And if you think that's bad, it just got, 1,000 times worse today. And just to give you the short version, and we'll go through the longer version as this hour unfolds. The accuser in this particular case is number 3. Her name is Julie Swetnick. And Lindsey Graham put out a statement today. When you read the statement, which I will read to you, and she's being represented by the new face of the Democratic Party, Michael Avenatti. And, as Graham said, I have a difficult time believing that any person would continue to go to, according to the affidavit, at least 10 parties over a 2-year period where women were routinely drugged and raped, gang raped, and nobody in 36 years had reported it. Why would any reasonable person continue to hang out with people like this? Why would any person continue to put their friends and themselves in danger? Isn't there some duty here to warn others? And Graham said that it was outrageous to believe that Kavanaugh behaved in such a manner. Now, the Democrats answer this, we can't have a vote. We can't have. But that was the whole strategy. Last minute, multiple allegations, no corroboration, the most out. Then they keep ratcheting up the intensity of it. And then they say, if the Republicans vote here, it's not fair. It's not fair. They hate women. That's what the whole plan is. I'm going to give you the details of this new allegation and how I think. Listen, you've got to understand when it comes to power for some, and I'm talking about Democratic Party establishment, The same people that are still to this day ignoring the repeated physical, emotional abuse charges against Keith Ellison by his girlfriend. Say nothing. It's selective moral outrage, feigned moral outrage on their part. All of it was designed, Dianne Feinstein, Chuck Schumer, they had the letter. They held it back. They planned this. They orchestrated this, and then they're going to claim it's unfair, and then they're going to say Republicans hate women, this is outrageous, and they're supporting a rapist.
With only a kite, a house key, and wet hemp string, Benjamin Franklin captured lightning in a bottle. Over 260 years later, with a little resourcefulness, ingenuity, and grit, we're not only capturing energy from the sun and wind, we're storing it, ensuring Americans have the energy they need whenever they need it. Learn more about the nation's leader in energy storage at nexteraenergy.com.
You know, think about all the cases that you know. Just off the top of your head, I've been involved. I've covered almost all of them myself. Cambridge police acting stupidly. Remember the Duke lacrosse kids and the media professors taking out an ad on the campus basically convicting these kids? You know, think of Robert Bork. Think of, remember Darren Wilson, the police officer in Ferguson, Missouri? Everybody thought he was a murderer. And the same case, Freddie Gray got murdered by the cops. All of them exonerated, every single one. Everyone rushed to judgment. Trayvon Martin. There is so much of this going on. It is the media is sick. It is ugly. It is at times evil. It is twisted. The idea that due process, presumption of innocence is gone. All right, when we come back, all the details of this latest claim and I have a lot to say on it. That's next. All right, 25 now till the top of the hour from our nation's capital, from the swamp, from the sewer, on the eve of the testimony. Well, we're not sure specifically if she's coming. I would expect now she's probably going to come, and that would be Professor Ford and, of course, Judge Kavanaugh. Then we have this new allegation. But just to lay a little bit more groundwork, and then we'll get into the specifics. So the Senate Judiciary Committee finally gets notified about something that the Democrats have had since July, and Dianne Feinstein had since July. Another question that very few seem to bring up is she said she didn't want to go public, and that was her statement. And the only people that had the information were the Democrats. How did it get leaked? But we'll put that aside for a minute. Once the Republicans found out, they offered an opportunity for her to come and testify before the committee and reopen the hearings and tried to accommodate Professor Ford, private or public, under oath, or they could send people to her. And then a bunch of conditions were set, and we have to go last, not Judge Kavanaugh. And it usually doesn't work that way. The accuser will make the accusation, and then the person that is being accused will get a chance to respond and defend themselves. Anyway, so eventually that happens. But in the interim, even though it was only on Monday of this week that the Republicans finally got their hands on the original letter that Professor Ford sent to Dianne Feinstein in July, well, once they found out the names, they did their due diligence and their investigation. And the identities were finally learned of the 4 people that Dr. Ford claimed were at the alleged event where the abuse took place. And then the committee reached out to each person and for a confidential interview. Each person denied, literally, having any knowledge of what Dr. Ford was saying. And then the second allegation comes out, Ronan Farrow, Jane Mayer, and that comes out in the New Yorker. And in that case, a woman by the name of Deborah Ramirez tells the New Yorker, again, in the early 80s, Kavanaugh exposed himself at a drunken college party when he was a freshman at Yale. And by the way, I'm not even mentioning the 220 plus people from when he was in high school and college and law school and in the Bush administration and women that clerked for him, et cetera, that had said just the opposite about him. And she said in her own words that she could not be totally sure if Kavanaugh was the perpetrator. The New Yorker goes on to say that she quickly was inebriated at the party. She told the New Yorker that she was foggy, meaning mentally foggy because of the alcohol and slurring her words. She even acknowledged in the New Yorker piece that she had significant memory gaps. And the New York Times had interviewed last week now several dozen people in an attempt to corroborate her story. That means they were trying. This is in the New York Times. They hate Donald Trump. And they came to this conclusion. They could find nobody with any firsthand knowledge of this event. And they also discovered that Miss Ramirez was contacting former Yale classmates, asking if they recalled the incident, and told some of them, she told some of them she couldn't be certain Mr. Kavanaugh was the one that exposed himself. Now, you would think under those circumstances that's case closed, but not in the minds of people that rush to judgment. And so now we have Michael Avenatti and a client that he is representing. Her name is Julie Swetnick. She put out a declaration, and it was made public today. First, she goes through her biography, etc. Then she says, I first met Mark Judge Brett Kavanaugh in approximately 1980, 1981. I was introduced to them at a house party that I attended in the Washington, D.C. area. I observed Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh as extremely close friends during the early 1980s when I knew them and interacted with them. I would describe them as joined at the hip, and I consistently saw them together in many social settings. There's no question in my mind that Mark Judge has significant information concerning the conduct, meaning of both of them, and I guess in the case of Brett Kavanaugh. And she goes on to say that, I attended well over 10 house parties in the Washington, D.C. area during the years 1981 to 1983, where Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were present. These parties were a common occurrence in the area and occurred nearly every weekend during the school year. And on numerous occasions at these parties, I witnessed Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh drink excessively and engage in highly inappropriate conduct, including being overly aggressive with girls and not taking no for an answer. Now, this conduct included fondling and grabbing of girls without their consent. Now, you got to stop here for a second. When she's alleging that he drank excessively, engaged in highly inappropriate behavior, fondling, grabbing of girls, they're not mentioning the names of the people who they did this to. And I would think with the memory that you have, that would be something that would be very pertinent to the discussion. She doesn't list who was the target of Brett Kavanaugh's supposed abusive and physical aggressive conduct. And, she said she heard things that happened during Beach Week, that she witnessed such conduct on one occasion, but she doesn't say what happened. Anyway, I observed Brett Kavanaugh drinking excessively at many of these parties and engaged in abusive and physically aggressive behavior towards girls, including pressing girls against him without their consent, grinding against girls, attempting to remove or shift girls' clothing to expose private body parts. I likewise observed him verbally abusive towards girls by making crude sexual comments to them that were designed to demean, humiliate, and embarrass. I often witnessed Brett Kavanaugh speak in a demeaning manner about girls in general, as well as, and I can't read this part of it for some reason on my page, I also have witnessed Brett Kavanaugh, behave as a mean drunk on many occasions at these parties. I've been told by other women that this conduct also occurred during the summer months in Ocean City, Maryland, on numerous occasions. I also witnessed such conduct on one occasion in Ocean City, Maryland, during what they call Beach Week. I have reviewed Brett Kavanaugh's recent claim on Fox News regarding his alleged innocence during his high school years and lack of sexual activity. This claim is absolutely false and a lie. I witnessed Brett Kavanaugh consistently engage in excessive drinking and inappropriate contact of a sexual nature with women during the early 80s. And during the years 81 to 82, I became aware of efforts by Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh and others to spike the punch at house parties that I attended with drugs and or grain alcohol so as to cause girls to lose their inhibitions and their ability to say, this caused me to make, an effort to avoid the punch. I mean, in other words, she's saying at these house parties she attended with drugs and grain alcohol, so girls would lose their inhibitions and their ability to say no. And this caused me to make an effort to purposely avoid the punch at these parties. I witnessed efforts by Mark Judge, Brett Kavanaugh, and others to target particular girls so they could be taken advantage of. It was usually a girl that was especially vulnerable because she was alone at the party or shy. And it goes on. I also witnessed Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh and others cause girls to become so inebriated, so disoriented, so they could be gang raped in a side room or a bedroom by a train of numerous boys. I have a firm recollection of seeing boys lined up outside of rooms at many of these parties waiting for their turn with a girl inside the room. These boys included Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh. In approximately 1982, I became the victim of one of these gang or train rapes when Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were present. Shortly after the incident, I shared what had transpired with at least two other people. During the incident, I was incapacitated without my consent and unable to get off the boys that were raping me. I believe I was drugged using Quaaludes or something similar placed in what I was drinking. I'm aware that other witnesses can attest to the truthfulness of each of the statements above. I declare under the penalty of perjury. That's the whole statement. I wanted to read it to you because I want you to hear this. And it's important. It is very important. One of the first things we have got to ask, if she went to 10, this is what Lindsey Graham said in a statement. I have a difficult time believing any person would continue to go to, according to the affidavit, 10 parties over a 2-year period of time where women were routinely gang raped and not reported. Why would any reasonable person continue to hang around with people like that? Graham continues, why would any person continue to put their friends and themselves in danger? Isn't there some duty to warn others? Graham said it was outrageous to believe that Kavanaugh behaved in such a manner and that he hoped the Senate will see this for the smear campaign that it is, and he pointed to the dozens of women who have come forward recently to advocate for Kavanaugh's character. He says, from my view, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it just did. The lawyer to porn stars has now just taken this debacle to an even lower level, Graham said, and I hope people will see the highly suspicious. You have to ask these questions. How is it that if this behavior is happening where girls are getting drugged and raped, if it happened at one party, if it happened at two parties, if it happened at three parties, and again, she's witnessing this until she claims at one point it happened to her. I can't think of more horrific, dark, evil treatment of women than what she is describing. It is a fair question to ask, why didn't any of these people 36 years ago stop this and go for help? If you saw your friends or other girls, a line of men outside of a room, the knowledge was there that people were being drugged and raped and they were waiting in line for their turn. Why was that never brought up? 10 specific incidents she is identifying here where, the WPIX in New York says, she claims she was gang raped in the presence of Brett Kavanaugh, and his friend Mark Judge admits that, again, she went over 10 of these parties where women were raped before she herself was attacked, and the way she tried to avoid being raped was not drinking the punch, is what she's saying, instead of telling people that, hey, these are evil, horrible people. And, so well over 10 of the parties that she attended, including Many parties where boys waited for their turn to gang rape a girl inside a room, and this was well known. You know, somebody has got to explain in what universe that this would be allowed to happen and kept secret for all of this time. You know, there's a lot more at stake here than I think most people know. We are watching now any lines of civility and common sense now being crossed. It is, you know, there's no line at this point Democrats are not willing to cross to prevent Brett Kavanaugh to become a Supreme Court justice, in spite of this being a 40-year period, 40-year track record of people saying just the opposite of this guy. You know, targeting vulnerable young women. Now, they're not named here. You know, we don't know. She hasn't said specifically. She said they were lined up, boys lined up to rape them after they were drugged and inebriated and whatever they put in this punch that she herself was avoiding. And that Brett was waiting outside a room of a gang rape. Not that she saw the gang rape, but waiting outside. But we know what was going on inside the rape, inside the room where rape was occurring. This is, you know, even I am shocked at how low Democrats can go at this point. And I think in 30 years, having learned the lessons of Richard Jewell, Duke Lacrosse, Ferguson, Missouri, Cambridge Police, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Trayvon, and everybody rushing to judgment, having witnessed every 2 to 4 years Republicans are racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. They want dirty air. They want dirty water. They want children to die, and they want to throw Granny over the cliff. All of that is bad enough. What they did to Bork was bad enough. What they did to Clarence Thomas was bad enough. What they say about conservatives every day this is liberal, radical leftism that we've never seen before. Now the big question is, how will America respond? How's the Senate going to respond? We've got an election in 41 days. 41 days. All right, when we come back, Joe DeGenevieve, Victoria Tunsing, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. We're expecting a press conference with the president. I'd assume this will be a topic that comes up. He's still at the UN. All right, glad you're with us. We are in the swamp, the sewer, Washington, D.C. An hour from now, we expect the president will be holding a press conference in New York. I've got to anticipate the latest, accusation against Brett Kavanaugh that came out from Michael Avenatti, representing a woman, a new accuser. Jim Garrity summed it up on National Review Online, saying the accuser contends that she attended at least 10 house parties over a 3-year period. It began when Kavanaugh was 15 or 16 years old. And she contends that similar parties, quote, occurred nearly every weekend during the school year. And then she goes on to contend that Kavanaugh and his friends engaged in criminal activities, including sexual assault on numerous occasions. From that description, it sounds like she witnessed some of these assaults, Garrity goes on, and then continue to attend parties. Then Garrity goes on and says she contends that Kavanaugh and Mark Judge obtained either alcohol or drugs such as Quaaludes or grain alcohol to spike the punch at these parties. She contends numerous boys were involved in multiple acts of sexual assault, literally lining up outside of a room, waiting their turn to commit sexual assaults. And in other words, a gang train rape is the words that she used. And as far as we know, not a single victim or witness ever called the police. As far as we know, not a single witness or victim ever told their parents, teachers, or any other responsible adult. And as far as we know, the accuser is the only person who ever attended these parties who has ever come forward making this claim, although she says that there are people that will back her up. And then he goes on, nothing related to this multi-year conspiracy to commit repeated acts of ritualized sexual assault ever came up in 6 FBI background checks or White House security clearance checks. And joining us now to weigh in on all of this, Joe DeGeneva, Victoria Tunsing of DeGeneva and Tunsing. Thank you both for being with us. Well, I'll just, Victoria, start with you and just get your initial thoughts on all of this. There's a lot to unpack here. Not the least of which is, at one point, this new woman is claiming that in order to avoid being a victim, she just wouldn't drink the punch, but she kept attending the parties, and she knew that this activity was going on at these parties, and nobody said a word to anybody at any point, any time.
As a woman, not as a lawyer, just as a woman, it boggles my mind. She's telling me that when she was about 18 years old, or she's telling all of us, when she was about 18, she went to parties and saw women being raped and drugged and didn't report it to the police, and then returned at approximately 10 parties. This is I'm a writer by trade before I went to law school, and I read this affidavit, and it's one of the poorest written documents I have ever seen. I mean, it's just vague all over the place. Like, he didn't want to know exactly which houses she went to the party. He didn't ask for any more names of any other people that were witnesses. It's just this vague accusations. She doesn't say the date of her birth. You're supposed to do that to establish that you're the age of majority in order to be able to swear to something. You have to establish that in the affidavit. Where is that? Did you practice law?
I read the comments of Lindsey Graham saying, quote, I have a difficult time believing, Joe, that any person would continue to go to, according to the affidavit, 10 parties over a 2-year period of time where women were routinely gang raped and not reported. Why would any reasonable person continue to hang out with people like this? Why would any person continue to put their friends and themselves in danger? Isn't there some duty to warn others, he says. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the affidavit is clearly suspect by virtue of its own content. It commits suicide in its language. She is clearly at least 2 years older than all the other people attending the parties. She keeps going to the parties. She never reports it to the police. She doesn't give her date of birth. She doesn't say whether or not she's married or single. She doesn't say whether or not she is a registered Democrat or a registered Republican or an independent. This affidavit, this declaration or affidavit, whatever it is, smacks of falsehood. And considering the source, which is the Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, and this woman's, the entire posture of this document just smells false.
You know, I've been watching all of this unfold. We'll start with Professor Ford, Victoria. And in the interim, remember, Dianne Feinstein, the Democrats knew about this in July, and they held it back. And then when the Republicans were finally able to get the name of the 4 people that Professor Ford had said were witnesses, the identities of other people that she claimed were at the party where that abuse allegedly took place. Well, they got into contact, and the Judiciary Committee reached out to every person for a confidential interview, and all of them denied having any knowledge of any of these parties matching Dr. Ford's description. Then we've got the New Yorker. The New Yorker comes out with a case about a woman named Deborah Ramirez. And when we get into the content of that story, she admits that she wasn't totally sure if it was Kavanaugh that was the perpetrator, spent almost a week thinking about it, and admitted she was quickly inebriated at the party. Her words, foggy, slurring her words, admitting she had significant memory gaps from that evening, et cetera, and it goes on from there. And other witnesses to that case were flatly denying the charges, saying it never happened. Even the New York Times said, well, not only did they interview dozens of people over the past week to corroborate the story of Miss Ramirez, but more than that, Miss Ramirez, they said, was contacting Yale classmates, asking them if they recalled the incident, and told some of them that she couldn't be certain that it was Kavanaugh that was the one that exposed himself. So that's allegation 1 and 2. Now this is allegation 3. They withheld allegation 1 for weeks and weeks to create this pressure time capsule now where they can accuse Republicans, if they go forward with a vote, of being insensitive and uncaring to women.
And I'm surprised that the Republican senators have not, every one of them said, Senator Feinstein, you violated the rules. This is a place where these kinds of allegations are supposed to be kept confidential until the veracity of them is known. That's how it works up there, because Joe and I have both worked up there. The allegations are made. The Republicans and the Democrats get together and decide how they're going to pursue them. Usually each staff person, they have former FBI people on their staffs as investigators. They send them out, and if they cannot be verified, they come back and they say, hey, we can't verify it. Then they are never, ever mentioned, Sean. This is an outrage that they made this public. If they are verifiable, then they come back, they bring in the candidates, the nominee, and they say, hey, you got some problems here. Maybe you want to withdraw your name. Then they don't ever announce what the problems are. They allow the person to go off. This is to encourage good people to go through the process. And that's what Judge Kavanaugh is talking about when he says we cannot discourage good people to want to volunteer for their country.
You look at the chronology in the case of Julie Swetnick, the person that's being represented by the new face of the Democratic Party, Michael Avenatti, and she says she attended more than 10 of these parties where women were routinely drugged and raped, and Brett Kavanaugh was present. But Kavanaugh was in high school in 1981 and 82 when she said she was at these parties. According to the New York Times, Swetnick said herself she was in college at the time. Now, is there an inconsistency in that point, Joe? In other words, I don't know college kids that go back and hang out with their high school friends that much.
I must say that it is inconceivable, unless she is the weirdest woman in the world who would have gone to college and would have gone back to these parties. Again, the affidavit just smells of falsehood, and the inconsistencies internally make it abundantly clear that this was put together very quickly and is missing all the essentials of a verifiable affidavit. I do not believe, after there was this frightful reaction this morning from people, oh, this is all over, this will end it. I don't believe it does. I actually think it strengthens Judge Kavanaugh's case. I think the committee should go forward with the hearing tomorrow, whether or not Dr. Ford shows up or not, and they should simply roll over the Democratic objections, and they should hold a vote on Friday. If they do not hold a vote, they are going to be in the worst type of political trouble. This is an outrage. What Victoria said earlier is what matters. You will never get people to want to be federal judges or do anything else except the worst type of candidate.
Well, there might be the first evidence that Grassley is caving. The Des Moines Register said, quoting Grassley, is saying, well, it could take place or it could not on Friday, depending on what happens tomorrow. I guess he means at the hearing.
He's just doing that, Sean. He's just saying that so he's covering himself because he can't anticipate what's going to happen at the hearing. The very fact that he announced it 3 days before, which is required under the Senate rules, means that he's serious to go forward.
Listen, I've known both of you a long time. There's a reason why I warn my audience, radio and television, every 2 years, every 4 years, this is what you're going to hear about Republicans, that they're racist, that they're sexist, misogynistic, Islamophobic, homophobic, xenophobic, that Republicans, if they don't support environmental extremism, they want dirty air and dirty water. They breathe it and they drink it. They want kids to die. They don't care about children. And there's going to be some congressional lookalike with grandma in a wheelchair being thrown over a cliff. Those are the tactics politically. And now consistently we see with any Republican president appointing a Supreme Court justice, we can expect a Borking, a Clarence Thomas, now a Kavanaughing, if you will.
This goes beyond the pale. I mean, I know Brett Kavanaugh. He's one of the most unassuming people. The very thought that he behaved like this at any time in his life is just inconceivable when you know the man and you know his demeanor. This is not.
Well, you could get 220 people to go back in your high school years and college years to say great things about you, but Joe and I could never have that happen, and he did.
That's true. I was just admitted to the Columbus, Indiana Bulldog Hall of Fame last week.
Well, congratulations.
Me and Mike Pence.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I think it's really important to appreciate where we are. Apropos of your comment, Sean, we are at a fulcrum point in history. This is the Republican Party's test for the next 25 years. They have to get this done. These are false charges. It is now clear that this is a campaign designed to destroy a good man, but worse than that, they want to destroy his wife and his daughters. Last night on Fox, some commentator who was on the show that I cannot remember said that that Kavanaugh had to worry about his daughters. He had the unmitigated gall to bring up the children in a conversation about this. I have to tell you something. My anger level at this has reached a fever pitch. I am expecting my party to defend this man to the hilt. To the hilt.
And if they do not, they will be rewarded. And they will do it again without batting an eye.
They, meaning the Democrats.
Yes.
You know, just saying somebody's racist when they're not. Remember the James Byrd ad in 2000? I mean, think of how deceptive that was. They got the daughter. This horrible evil was perpetrated on this man. I think his first name was James Byrd. And the daughter said, it's like my father was killed all over again because George Bush didn't support hate crimes legislation. What the ad left out is George Bush supported the death penalty for the evil perpetrated on that innocent man.
Well, how about Harry Reid saying, hey, people tell me that Romney didn't pay his taxes for 10 years. People tell me that. And then he joked about it later, and the press laughed with him, how that was such a clever thing to have done.
Well, Ted Kennedy did to Robert Bork.
The Democrats have changed the public discourse on nominations and politics in general. To watch that clownish senator from Hawaii make her incompetent, ignorant comments about due process,
shut up, man.
The presumption of innocence, and about all men. Let me say this to the senator from Hawaii.
Well, if you ever meant it, and I know what you're saying, if any man says that about her, yeah, the outrage that will come your way. You know, shut up to men. It's just horrible. I don't know how this is going to play out in 41 days. We've got to watch, wait, and see. But these are unbelievable times. Joe, thank you. Victoria, thank you. Quick break. Right back. Lindsey Graham. He is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. He'll join us coming up next. All right, 25 till the top of the hour. We expect a news conference with President Trump. He's still in New York at the United Nations. We are broadcasting from the swamp, the sewer. And if you never thought it was that bad, it's worse than ever today. 800-941-SEAN is our number. We'll get to your calls in a couple of minutes here. I promise we're going to get to it. We'll get to the press conference, too. So tomorrow, the much-anticipated hearings with Professor Ford. She will get unlimited amount of time to give her statement. Every senator will have 5 minutes then to question her. Then the same will be given to Judge Kavanaugh. But, again, it wasn't until Monday that Dianne Feinstein finally turned over the letter from Dr. Ford to Senator Grassley, who's the chairman of the committee. They never asked Professor Kavanaugh, not one time. When they had private meetings about the claim of Professor Ford, not one time did they bring it up during the hearings. They held it. And when the committee finally, the Senate Judiciary Committee, finally got a hold of the names of the people and learned the identities of the 4 individuals that Dr. Ford claimed were at the party where her alleged abuse took place, well, the committee reached out to each person, gave them an opportunity to conduct a confidential interview, and None of them, they all denied having any knowledge of any party matching Professor Ford's description. Then the New Yorker case, where she, in this particular case, Deborah Ramirez, and she herself couldn't totally be sure if Kavanaugh was the perpetrator. Quickly inebriated at the party, quote, foggy and slurring her words, that she has significant memory gaps. The New York Times said that they had interviewed several dozen people over the past week in an attempt to corroborate her story and couldn't find anyone with firsthand knowledge. And then they pointed out that Miss Ramirez herself had been contacting former Yale classmates, asking if they recalled the incident, and told some of them that she could not be certain Mr. Kavanaugh was the one who, quote, exposed himself. Then Michael Avenatti with his client today, Julie Swetnick. And, of course, these allegations that she went to at least 10 parties, 10, where routinely people were being drugged and gang train raped during all of these parties. Senator Lindsey Graham is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I read your statement from earlier today. I'll let you say it in your own words, but I think you raised some very significant, serious points, and I want to get the broader question into what you think is going on here.
Well, I think Mr. Avenatti has came forward 2 days before we're voting with an accusation that is internally inconsistent, outrageous, and offends sensibilities. Brett Kavanaugh was supposedly a sophomore or junior in high school, and he was organizing gang rapes over a period of 2 years. What person keeps going back to parties where people are drugged and raped? They never call the cops. If you can't figure this one out, you're not really trying. We're going to have the hearing with Ms. Ford tomorrow. There's no evidence to corroborate her allegation, no time, no place. Everybody named said they didn't see it. I'm sure something happened to Ms. Ford, but you cannot hold Kavanaugh accountable because there's no evidence. This last event coming from the Avenatti world says all you need to know. They're trying to destroy this man. They're trying to deny this pick. They're trying to win the 2018 midterms and deny President Trump a Supreme Court pick. That's what this is about.
You know, Senator, you've been there for a round or two with Supreme Court justices. How many How many justices have you voted on in the course of your time in the Senate?
4. I voted for both of them put forward by
Barack Obama.
Yeah, and all the Bushes, they're all eminently qualified. Here's what I would say. If I had done this, if I'd held out information about a liberal Democrat nominee, dropped it at the last minute, went around and making accusations like this that are unverified, they would ruin my life, the media would, and I would deserve it. The double standard is on display here. I cannot believe that this is the Senate. This is a new low for me.
As you watch all of this unfold, and I've read this statement by Michael Avenatti's client, repeatedly. Julie Swetnick is her name, Miss Swetnick.
Right.
And I read it over and over again. And she said that these parties took place all of the time and that she attended at least 10 of them and that boys were lined up, that they would purposely drug and get these girls inebriated and put things in their drinks, and that there were lines of boys waiting to their turn to go in and gang rape these women. And this comes up, as you say, just in the closing hours before the vote. To me, in many ways, the Democrats never wanted a vote on this. And maybe that's why Dianne Feinstein held back this information that she had in July. And then the slow drip, drip, drip. And the New Yorker piece, in my view, never should have been published based on the statements of Miss Ramirez herself. And in this particular case, if all of this had happened, how is it possible with all of these people that are watching these events unfold? Gang rape 10 times, 10 parties, abusing women in this way, that none of the victims, they're not named, that nobody involved in this ever told their mother, their father, their friends, their clergy, the school, the police, somebody. It's inconceivable to me.
Well, I've been a judge, a defense attorney, and a prosecutor before I got into this business, and I can tell you, If you turn this case over to the Maryland State Police, it will go nowhere. It's inconceivable for me to believe that a person would attend 10 parties over a 2-year period where people are being drugged and raped, never warn your girlfriends, keep going back, putting yourself at risk. Kavanaugh denies this. He says, I don't know this lady. She's older than Kavanaugh. She was in college. This supposedly happened when he was a sophomore in high school. All I can say is that they're portraying Kavanaugh as Bill Cosby. He is not. People like Bill Cosby do it all their life. You just don't do it during high school and stop. You're not a serial rapist for a few years. If you got this problem, it keeps going, and there's no evidence that he's abused any woman anytime in the workplace when he had power over them. I hope we can figure this out. This is a new low for me. It comes from Avenatti. We should consider it the trash that it is.
Let me ask you this. Look, it's a very tight margin, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. But on the other hand, you do have a number of Senate Democrats that have an election in 41 days in states where Donald Trump won by big margins. And we'd be talking about people like Bill Nelson and Claire McCaskill, who are ready as a no on Judge Kavanaugh, and Joe Manchin and Donnelly and, North Dakota. I mean, there's Heidi Heitkamp. Do you think this is going to impact the election?
Well, I hope people will look at the three people you've described and say whether or not they're being fair process. Is this fair to withhold information, drop it just a few days before you vote, ask for an FBI investigation when you had weeks and months to do the same? Is it fair to allow Michael Avenatti to come in 2 days before the vote and destroy somebody's life by calling them a serial rapist in the most absurd allegation yet? Is it fair to destroy Judge Kavanaugh's life and to deny him a seat on the court based on an article that the New York Times would not print? It goes to your judgment. It goes to your fairness, the sense of fairness. And the question is, do you honor the fact that President Trump won? This is about destroying the election, undercutting the President Trump's ability to pick qualified nominees to the court and get it into 2020. If they vote with their colleagues on this, I would argue to the people of the three states in question that they're trying to overturn the election.
Senator, I've been now uncovering, and I have a great ensemble team that I've been working with over a year and a half, almost 2 years now, and we've been able to expose corruption on a level in our Justice Department, even the top ranks, not rank and file, top ranks of the FBI, where we now know that a fix was in an investigation into Hillary. We know that Hillary bought and paid for Russian lies and propaganda, part of the dossier that Christopher Steele put together that was disseminated to the American people to give Hillary an edge and convince people not to vote for Donald Trump, contained phony allegations that Donald Trump was in Moscow years earlier and there were two hookers in the Moscow Ritz-Carlton urinating in the bed. I mean, I thought that was a low point. But
Trump.
Yeah.
Wanting to shake your hand. He's a germaphobe.
Well, but it's a good. But those allegations, think about this, were also used.
Yeah.
They were used to obtain a FISA warrant. The bulk of information, and I'm quoting your memo, the Grassley-Graham memo, the Nunes memo, the bulk of information they used when lying and committing, I believe, a fraud on the FISA court was that dossier that talked about the hookers.
Right. Well, the dossier was prepared by a foreign agent hired by the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign to gather dirt on candidate Trump. It's still to this day not verified. There's nothing in that dossier that's been verified. It's all political garbage. The court was never told that the author of the dossier hated Trump and was on the payroll of a political party. If we had done something like this, it'd be front page news everywhere. Somebody needs to investigate how the FISA warrants process could get so off the rails and look into Page and Strucker regarding the Clinton email investigation and the FISA warrant.
Well, I'm hoping we get to the bottom of that sooner than later. You know, I talk every 2 to 4 years. I warn my audience on radio and TV, and I back it up with tape, with video. I did it last night. I could do it here today. It takes too much time because there's too much information. Every 2 to 4 years, Republicans, and these are horrible things to accuse people of, are universally called racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, that they want dirty air and water. They breathe and drink it, but they want it. And they hate children and want them to die. And there's always going to be an ad of some congressman or senator or Senate candidate throwing Granny over a cliff because Republicans hate old people.
Right.
If that's not bad enough, now we've got all of this mess after Robert Bork and Clarence Thomas even.
Well, it never happens to their people. It always happens to our people. I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan. It would never enter my mind to do something like this to them, to legitimize what I think is just completely uncorroborated. The last incident here coming from Avenatti, he told us about this Sunday. He has yet to produce the lady for an interview. This is all last-minute character assassination. It's internally inconsistent. No reasonable person would go to 10 parties where there's gang rape and drugs being used without telling somebody. And I would just end with this. It's not working. They do it every 2 to 4 years, but we have the House, we have the Senate, and we have the White House. Clearly, the American people are not buying what they're selling. So if I were a Democrat, I would think of a new way to get reelected, or to get the White House, the House, and the Senate, rather than trying to destroy us. Why don't you try to build up the life of the American people? Rather than try and destroy Brett Kavanaugh, why don't you offer an optimistic view of America?
You know, I will say that is what I think elections should be about. What about your colleagues? I mean, we've heard from people like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker and Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Those are the four people that normally conservatives would worry about supporting the president. Have you spoken with them, and how do you think they'll come down on this?
Well, we had a good lunch, and again, I sort of have a reputation of working with the other side. I did vote for Sotomayor and Kagan. I think.
Yeah. By the way, sometimes over the years you have gotten me mad once or twice.
I'm sure I have, and probably rightly so. But I've just tried to be real measured here and say, listen, you could not get an arrest warrant or a search warrant based on the Miss Ford allegation. No time, no place, no corroborating witnesses. The Avenatti attack should speak for itself. And I'm just asking my colleagues, don't abandon Brett Kavanaugh. Don't buy into the idea that he was at one time in his life a serial rapist and he just quit. That's all garbage. Rally around this good man. He deserves better. And we need to put him on the court and not legitimize this. If you vote no, you're basically saying you believe this about Brett Kavanaugh, and it would be so unfair. I hope we don't go there. But at the end of the day, we have a process. We'll see what Ms. Ford says. I'm optimistic, Sean. I'm optimistic not only that we're going to get Republican votes, we're going to pick up a few Democratic votes because this has been handled so poorly.
Have you talked to some of your Democratic colleagues, maybe some of those that are in states that Donald Trump won by big... And what are they saying to you?
They're pretty disappointed. They think the process has been unfair from the get-go. And this latest allegation, again, just use common sense. Does this sound like Brett Kavanaugh? Does it sound like anybody who could have accomplished all he's done in life? Does it really sound like a credible accusation that this man would orchestrate gang rapes for a 2-year period when he was in high school? Nobody would know about it, and the person who's making the accusation he doesn't know and never told anybody. Does that make any sense? And it's coming from Michael Avenatti, for God's sakes.
Yeah. You know, I wonder if good people are ever going to want to do anything like this anymore. I honestly don't think.
My friend.
I don't think anybody's going to sign up for this crap anymore.
That's what I keep telling my colleagues. What we do today determines the quality of people we'll get in the future, and it is about Brett Kavanaugh. Miss Ford's going to be heard, but how in the world could you ruin this guy's life based on an accusation that's 35 years old with no verification, no time, no place? And if you buy into the latest accusation, then we've lost our way as a party and really as a country. For Republicans, this is a defining moment. I've been up here for over 20 years. We need to help this man. He deserves our help, and we need to reject this slander.
All right, Senator Lindsey Graham, we're going to watch very closely. Thank you for being with us. Maybe I'll be seeing you in Washington tonight or tomorrow, I understand, from my TV staff. 800-941-SEAN. At the top of the hour, we expect the president is going to be holding a press conference. When he does, we'll bring that to you live. A lot is coming in and being fed to me as it relates to this latest accuser. I'm just not going to jump the gun on any of it. Just let this percolate on its own. And we'll be learning a lot more in the hours and days to come, is what all I can say is. Glad you're with us. Final hour free-for-all. A note for our affiliate stations all across the country. The president has started a press conference in New York City. We're taking it from its beginning about 2 minutes delayed. We will run it in its entirety, and of course we might be blowing breaks, so please beware across the Sean Hannity Show network. This is the president in New York press conference.
At the United Nations in New York, and this is quite a gathering. Wow, it's a lot of people, a lot of media. We've covered a great deal of territory. Just left, as you know, Prime Minister Abe of Japan. We're starting trade talks with Japan. They were not willing for years to talk trade, and now they're willing to talk trade. And I'm sure we'll make a very good deal. Just concluded, as you know, 2 days ago, signed a deal with South Korea, trade deal, tremendous deal with South Korea. It means a lot of business for our farmers. We're opening up for farmers. We're opening up for a lot of different groups. We're going to be able to sell much more than double the number of automobiles that we were allowed under a deal that was totally defective, that was there before. And so we're very happy with that. That deal is actually concluded. We're very well along the way with Mexico. The relationship is very good. And with Canada, we'll see what happens. They're charging us 300% tariffs on dairy products. We can't have that. We can't have that. With China, as you know, we put out an announcement today. They would like to see me lose an election because they've never been challenged like this. But I want to open up China to our farmers and to our industrialists and our companies. And China is not open, but we're open to them. They charge us 25, 35, 55% for things, and we charge them nothing in terms of coming into the country. Cars, they're at 25%, and we're at 2% and 2.5%, and don't even collect it, but we collect it now. So we're doing very well in our situation with China on trade. I have a great relationship with the president of China, President Xi, but it's got to be a two-way street. It, for 25 years and longer, was not. And trillions of dollars was taken out of the United States for the benefit of China. We just can't have that. We have to make it fair. So we're at $250 billion now at 25% interest, and a lot of money is coming into our coffers. And it's had no impact on our, absolutely, by the way, no impact on our economy, which I said it wouldn't. In fact, steel is like the hottest industry there is. If you look at what happened with steel, we're charging a 25% tariff for the dumpers. They dump massive amounts of steel. They want to put the steel companies out of business. And after they're out of business, they'll come in and charge 5 times more than you ever thought possible. And we need steel and we need aluminum. And those industries are doing well. But steel is incredible. U.S. Steel is opening up a minimum of 8 plants. Nucor is opening up plants, and these are big plants, $750 million and $1 billion plants in some cases. So what's happening with the steel industry is very exciting to me. It's being rebuilt overnight. If you look at the miners and coal, if you look at energy, LNG, Japan just gave us some numbers that are incredible. They're doubling the amount that they are going to be buying for Japan. They're taking the LNG and they're doubling it up. I said, you have to do me a favor. We don't want these big deficits. You're going to have to buy more. They're buying massive amounts of equipment and military equipment, and other countries are doing the same thing because we have trade imbalances with almost everybody. It's a rare exception that we don't. So we are doing great as a country. Unfortunately, they just raised interest rates a little bit because we are doing so well. I'm not happy about that because I know it's going to be a question. I am not happy about that. I'd rather pay down debt or do other things, create more jobs. So I'm worried about the fact that they seem to like raising interest rates. We can do other things with the money. But they raised them. And they're raising them because we're doing so well. You know, we're doing much better than I had projected in terms of when I was campaigning. I said we were going to do this, and we're doing much better than anybody ever thought possible. And I will say, if others got in, it would have been just the opposite, because they were going to put restrictions on, they were going to put regulations on, they were going to choke the economy as it was already choking, but it would have been worse, and they were going to raise your taxes. That's what they want to do now if they ever got control, which I don't think they'll have control for a long time. So with that being said, we'll take some questions, and yes, please. John, go ahead. We have plenty of time.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Of course, what you're looking forward to tomorrow is the hearings with Judge Kavanaugh before the Judiciary Committee. Yes. In 1991, when Joe Biden passed along to the Bush 41 White House the allegations that Anita Hill had raised against Clarence Thomas, the Bush White House asked the FBI to look into it as part of Judge Thomas's background investigation, not a criminal investigation, but the background investigation. When these allegations were raised, why didn't this White House do the same thing? And with all of the allegations that are coming out now about Judge Kavanaugh, was there an opportunity missed here to have investigators look into this and get some sort of clarity one way or the other?
Well, the FBI told us they've investigated Judge Kavanaugh 6 times, 5 times, many times over the years. They know him very well. But here there was nothing to investigate from at least one standpoint. They didn't know the location. They didn't know the time. They didn't know the year. They didn't know anything. And it's like, where do you go? Also, it's not for the FBI. If you look at what Joe Biden said, he said they don't do this. And he said it very clearly. So I think when you really look at it all, it's not going to change any of the Democrats' minds. They're obstructionists. They're actually con artists, because they know how quality this man is, and they've destroyed a man's reputation, and they want to destroy it even more. And I think people are going to see that in the midterms, what they've done to this family, what they've done to these children, these beautiful children of his, and what they've done to his wife. And they know it's a big, fat con job. And they go into a room, and I guarantee you, they laugh like hell at what they pulled off on you and on the public. They laugh like hell. So it wouldn't have mattered if the FBI came back with the cleanest score, and you understand that very well, John. If they would have come back with the most perfect, we found everything, and he's perfectly innocent of everything, it wouldn't have made a difference. You wouldn't have gotten one vote. Now, we will get votes from the Democrats if we win. You'll have 3, 4, or 5 Democrats giving us votes, because they're in states that I won by 30 and 40 points, and they're going to give us votes. But other than that, you probably won't get any, John. Yes, go ahead, please.
Mr. President, there are now 3 women accusing Judge Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct. Are you saying that all 3 of those women are liars? Is there anything that could be said at this hearing tomorrow that could cause you to withdraw the nomination? Anything at all that...
I won't get into that game. I only tell you this. This is one of the highest quality people that I've ever met. And everybody that knows him says the same thing. And these are all false to me. These are false accusations in certain cases, and certain cases, even the media agrees with that. I can only say that what they've done to this man is incredible. You know, it's very interesting. I pick a lot of judges. I have 145 judges I will be picking by the end of a fairly short period of time, because President Obama wasn't big on picking judges. When I got there, I said, how is this possible? I have 145, including Court of Appeals judges. And they just didn't do it. You know why? They got tired. They got complacent. Something happened. I have 145 judges. Everybody wants to be a federal judge, not just a Supreme Court judge. I'm talking about Court of Appeals. I'm talking about district court. I don't think they're going to want to so much. I'll be calling people, and we'll have people calling people that do this. And people are going to be scared, because we could say it about you. 35 years ago, you met, and you might not know what's going on What is going on? Why did they wait so long? Why did Senator Feinstein wait till the hearings were over and make this case? Why didn't she bring it right at the beginning when you ask about, as an example, the FBI? Why didn't they bring this right at the beginning, during the hearing? You would have had all the time in the world for the FBI. It would have been fine. Now, the FBI, as you know, did investigate this time, as they have 5 or 6 other times, and they did a very thorough investigation. But this is a big con job, and I would love to be in the room with the Democrats, close the door, you guys are all away outside waiting, and Schumer and his buddies are all in there laughing how they fooled you all. Let's just stop them. A big fat con. Yeah, go ahead.
But Mr. President, if I could follow up, you have daughters. Can you understand why a victim of sexual assault would not report it at the time? Don't you understand?
By the way, I only say this: 36 years, no charge, no nothing.
But that happens often. I mean,
people are going to have to make a decision. 36 years, there's no charge. All of a sudden, the hearings are over, and the rumors start coming out. And then you have this other con artist, Hannity, come out with another beauty today. I only say that you have to look at the facts. The senators are very capable people. They're very good people. I know many of them. They're friends of mine. These are very talented, very good people. And they're going to vote. They're going to have to believe what they believe. When I look at what's happened to the reputation of a great gentleman, a great intellect, a brilliant man, somebody that has a chance to be one of our great Supreme Court justices in history, intellectually, I think it's a shame. Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. President, my name is Tomas Regalado from Radio and TV Marti. Mr.
Okay.
President, yesterday at the speech at the UN, you spoke about how Venezuela's problem was because of Cuba and the Castros, how they went in there and they brought socialism and communism to Venezuela and now to Nicaragua as well. Mr. President, are you going to be more proactive now against Cuba as well?
I've been very proactive against Cuba. I don't like what's happening in Cuba. As you know, President Obama gave them a pass, and I didn't like it. Neither do Cuban people based in Miami and based in our country that came from Cuba and suffered in Cuba. I don't like what he did. I've ended much of it, most of it. I don't like what's happening in Cuba, and I certainly don't like what's happening in Venezuela. Yes,
Mr.
please.
President.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, just to finish really fast, you said also that you had a call to action to ask the leaders around the world to also end socialism. Would you like to be recognized as a...
Well, I wouldn't say that socialism has been working really well around the world. Okay, you can take a look at Venezuela as your number one, I guess the one that's most obvious. But you take a look around the world, socialism is not exactly riding high. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, after I'm finished, if Ouija or Hallie or Vivian or one of our female colleagues could go after me, that would be great. Mr. President, just to follow up on these allegations against Brett Kavanaugh.
What does he mean by that? Explain. What does that mean?
I think it would be great if a female...
What does it mean? No, what does it mean?
It would be great if a female reporter would ask you a question about this issue. So if you don't mind...
I wouldn't mind that at all, no. Wouldn't mind it at all.
All right, well, let me... if I
wouldn't make any difference to me.
All right.
Go ahead.
If I could follow up on John and John's question, why is it, Mr. President, that you always seem to side with the accused and not the accuser? You have 3 women here who are all making allegations, who are all asking that their stories be heard. And, you know, if you look at the case of Roy Moore, if you look at the case of one of your staffers, you seem to time and again side with the accused and not the accuser. Is that because of the many allegations that you've had made against you over the years?
Well, first of all, I wasn't happy with Roy Moore. Let's get that straight. But Roy Moore was a Republican candidate, and I would have rather had a Republican candidate win. I was very happy with Luther Strange, who was a terrific man from Alabama, but Luther Strange had a lot of things going against him. As far as women, whether it's a man or a woman, these are, you know, it can happen the other way. Allegations can go the other way also. You understand that. And whether it was a man or a woman, 30 years ago, 36 years ago. In fact, they don't even know how many years ago because nobody knows what the time is. That's a long time. And I could pick, as an example, hopefully I won't have to do it as a replacement, because hopefully this is going to go very well on Thursday. It's going to go very well on Monday or Saturday or Sunday or whenever they vote. But I could pick a woman, and she could have charges made from many years ago also.
But don't you understand,
and I would
that
look at the character. No, what I have to do
are reluctant to come forward. You've raised doubts about these accusers. Many of them.
I don't think people are reluctant to come forward. They're going to have a chance to speak at a. They have a major chance to speak. Excuse me. They have a major chance to speak, and it will be tomorrow, I assume. We've delayed this, meaning the Republican senators, not me. The Republican senators have delayed this for weeks now. They're giving the women a major chance to speak. Now, it's possible I'll hear that and I'll say, hey, I'm changing my mind. That is possible. We want to give them a chance to speak.
You think all three
and they're
should have
given.
the chance? All three should have the chance?
Well, whoever is given a chance. We've delayed it a long time, but they're going to have a big shot at speaking and making their case. And you know what? I could be persuaded also. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, please. Please, go ahead. Go ahead. I'd like to go. Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And a couple of questions for you to follow up on some answers that I didn't quite hear from you, if you would allow me a couple of questions. First of all, do you think these women, all three of them, are liars? Yes or no?
Have they been what?
Are they liars?
I can't tell you. I have to watch tomorrow. I have to read. I just heard about one a little while ago. I can tell you her lawyer is a lowlife, okay? So I can't tell you whether or not they're liars until I hear them. I don't know what happened today because I've been very busy with Japan, with South Korea, with China, and about 7 other countries, as you know. And I chaired the Security Council. So I don't know about today's person that came forward. I do know about the lawyer. And you don't get much worse, bad reputation to take a look at his past. So as far as the other women are concerned, I'm going to see what happens tomorrow. I'm going to be watching. You know, believe it or not, I'm going to see what's said. So it's possible that they will be convincing. Now, with all of that being said, Judge Brett Kavanaugh has been for many years one of the most respected people in Washington. He's been on, I guess you'd call it, the second highest court. And every single person knows him. A lot of people know him well. And those people don't believe what's going on. I can always be convinced. I have to hear it.
It sounds like what you're saying is there is a situation, there is a scenario under which you would withdraw Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. Is that correct?
If I thought he was guilty of something like this, yeah, sure.
And you will wait until tomorrow to make up your mind?
I want to watch. I want to see. I hope I can watch. I'm meeting with a lot of countries tomorrow, but I will certainly in some form be able to watch. And I'll also rely on some very fair and talented Republican senators who, look, if we brought George Washington here and we said we have George Washington, the Democrats would vote against him, just so you understand. And he may have had a bad past. Who knows? You know, he may have had some, I think, accusations made. Didn't he have a couple of things in his past? George Washington would be voted against 100% by Schumer and the con artists. I mean, 100%, 100%. So it really doesn't matter from their standpoint. That's why when John asked about the FBI, if the FBI did the most thorough investigation in the history of the FBI and they found him to be 100% perfect, he would lose every single vote. Now, if the Republicans win tomorrow, I think you're going to get some votes from the Democrats. You know why? Because we all know why, because it's called politics. Then you'll probably get some votes. Okay, let's go. One more question? Yes.
Just to follow up
she stands up. I'd like to ask about 3 questions. It's not really fair to everyone else, but should I let her ask another question?
Follow up on.
Go ahead.
To follow up on a question that a colleague asked as well, about the benefit of the doubt that you have given to people like Roy Moore, to Roger Ailes, to Bill O'Reilly, to Brett Kavanaugh. They're all men. Why is that?
It's not a benefit of the doubt.
Has there ever been an instance when you've given the benefit of the doubt?
I've known them, Haley, I've known them for a long time. And a lot of these people, And some I've been disappointed with. I have been disappointed with some others. There are charges that are pretty weak. But I've known people for a long time. I never saw them do anything wrong. I never saw them do anything wrong. And there are some that probably I agree. I can tell you there are some that I've been watching for a long time. And in a couple of cases, they weren't Republicans. In a lot of cases, they were not. They were exactly the opposite. But I've been watching them for a long time. And I knew for a long time these were not good people, and they were never brought up. Okay, yes, ma'am, go ahead. Thank you very much, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President. When the allegations first surfaced, you initially said how important it was for Dr. Ford to testify and that you wanted to hear from her.
I do.
But
I wish it could have gone quicker.
Well, you also said that if what she said were as bad as she claims, surely her or her parents would have reported it. And just today you said you would.
Well, there is a truth. I mean, there is a chance that her parents could have reported it 36 years ago.
So my question is.
It doesn't mean they had to report it, because in some instances people keep it quiet. It's a very tough situation for a woman. There's no question about it. And in some cases they do report it. Frankly, had they reported it, it would have been pretty amazing, wouldn't it? But I guess they didn't, and that's okay. I'm not saying they had to report it, because it's
for all our affiliate stations along the Sean Hannity Show network, we are going to stay with this press conference. The president in New York at the United Nations taking questions about Judge Kavanaugh and more. We'll stick with this, and if you need to take a break, I understand.
Go ahead.
Do you want to hear her story before?
I'd like to hear her story, yeah. Well, we're giving her time.
Have you already made up your mind?
They would have given her time last week. This is the United States Senate. This is the most important position that a president can give out. I think we can say by far. I've actually heard it's the most important decision a president can make. I disagree with that. War and peace. I always say war and peace. And after that, Supreme Court justice, right? I look forward to hearing from her. We could have heard from her last week. We could have heard from her for a long time. It'll be interesting to hear what she has to say. Okay?
And let me follow up on Jim's question. Mr. President, let me follow up on Jim's question that I don't think we got an answer to.
Which one? Which question?
How have your personal experiences being accused by more than a dozen
I've been accused. I've been accused. False accusations.
Right.
Excuse me.
How have those?
I've been accused. And I was accused by, I believe it was 4 women. You can check with Sean Hannity. You can check with Fox, because they covered it very strongly. Who got paid? Excuse me. I was accused by 4 or 5 women who got paid a lot of money to make up stories about me. We caught them, and the mainstream media refused to put it on television. They refused to even write about it. There were 4 women, and maybe more. I think the number is 4 or 5. But one had a mortgage paid off her house, $52,000. Another one had other things happen. And the one that reported it, I believe, was offered $750,000 to say bad things about me. And she is the one that reported it. This woman is incredible. She reported it instead of taking the money. So I've had numerous accusations about me.
Right.
They made false statements about me, knowing they were false. I never met them. I never met these people. And what did they do? What did they do? They took money in order to say bad things. I've had stories written in the New York Times front page about 4 women, the whole top center front page of the New York Times. I think it was 4 big pictures. I said, wow, that's a big thing. What's that? These were women that were quoted saying bad things about me. Not the worst things about me, but bad things. And I said, gee, that's too bad. I knew them a long time ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I said, that's too bad. I'm surprised at them. And then all of a sudden I see them on television, nothing to do with me. The next day or day later, they were incensed. They said, Donald Trump is a nice guy. We never said this. The New York Times did false reporting. They're fake news. And you know what? The New York Times would not report that their story was fake. These women said great things. Not only did they not say the bad stuff, they said great things about me. Front page. And those women, they're incredible women. They went on television, and they didn't want to, and I didn't ask them. And they said the New York Times made it up. They gave false quotes. and they went on a lot of shows. They were really incensed, and they couldn't believe it. That's why people know that a lot of the news is fake, and a lot of the people sitting here are fake. But 20% of them are wonderful, okay?
If I could just actually ask my question, Mr. Trump. You didn't let me ask my question.
You've been asking a question for 10 minutes.
You
Please sit down. Please, go ahead.
How did those impact your opinions on the allegations against
Well, it does impact my opinion. You know why? Because I've had a lot of false charges made against me. I'm a very famous person, unfortunately. I've been a famous person for a long time. But I've had a lot of false charges made against me, really false charges. I know friends that have had false charges. People want fame, they want money, they want whatever. So when I see it, I view it differently than somebody sitting home watching television where they say, oh, Judge Kavanaugh, this or that. It's happened to me many times. I've had many false charges. I had a woman sitting in an airplane, and I attacked her while people were coming onto the plane, and I have a #1 bestseller out. I mean, it was a total phony story. There are many of them. So when you say, does it affect me in terms of my thinking with respect to Judge Kavanaugh? Absolutely, because I've had it many times. And if the news would have reported these 4 people, I couldn't believe it. When I heard that they caught these 4 people, I said, wow, that's a big story. And it was for Fox. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier today and just now, you made a significant allegation against the Chinese government. You suggested that the Chinese had meddled in or are meddling in.
That's right. That's what I hear.
Midterm election.
That's what I hear.
What evidence do you have of that, sir? Is there a national intelligence estimate?
We have evidence. It'll come out. Yeah, I can't tell you now, but it didn't come out of nowhere that I can tell you. Now, they've actually admitted that they're going after farmers. I mean, I think most of you can cover that. I like that you're shaking your head. Yes, I'm going to ask you the next question because of that, okay? It's probably going to be the killer of all questions. But let me just explain.
If you're not prepared to come forward with the evidence, sir.
China now, we put on $250 billion, and they're paying 25% on that. They're paying billions and billions. This has never happened to China. And I like China, and I like President Xi a lot. I think he's a friend of mine. He may not be a friend of mine anymore, but I think he probably respects. From what I hear, if you look at Mr. Pillsbury, the leading authority on China, he was on a good show. I won't mention the name of the show recently, and he was saying that China has total respect for Donald Trump and for Donald Trump's very, very large brain. He said, Donald Trump, they don't know what to do. Never happened. Well, one thing they are trying to do is they're trying to convince people to go against Donald Trump, because a normal, regular political person that has no concept of what the hell he's doing would let China continue to take $500 billion a year out of our country and rebuild their country. I mean, they were building 29 massive bridges, like the George Washington Bridge. They're building things that we don't build anymore. But we're starting to build them again. And our economy now is hotter than it's ever been. I don't know if you saw the confidence levels this morning that just came out. Fantastic. And in all fairness to the Fed raising rates, they're raising rates because we've never done like we're doing now. And one of the things that is nice about the rates, the people that were hurt the worst by these zero interest rates, and, you know, when President Obama had an economy that was the worst comeback since the Great Depression and all that, you've all heard that. But remember, he was playing with zero interest money. He was playing with funny money. That's easy. I'm playing with fairly expensive money. So when he does that, the people that benefit are people that actually, in their whole life, they would save 10, 15, 20% of their salary, put it in the bank. Those people got killed because they put their money in the bank. They were going to live off the interest, and there was no interest. Now those people are starting to get interest. And those are the people, frankly, that deserve to, you know, they did a great job. The people that did it right, the people that did the best job got hurt the most. So in one sense, I like it, but basically, I'm a low interest rate person, I hate to tell you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. President,
yes.
You have another meeting tomorrow with Rod Rosenstein.
Yes.
Are you planning to fire Rod Rosenstein?
I'm talking to him. We've had a good talk. He said he never said it. He said he doesn't believe it. He said he has a lot of respect for me. And he was very nice, and we'll see. And he's a member of the Trump administration in that sense. It's the Justice Department. I would certainly prefer not doing that. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. I mean, unless you call obstruction the fact that I fight back, I do fight back. I really fight back. I mean, if you call that obstruction, that's fine. But there's no obstruction. There's no collusion. I'm going to meet with him tomorrow. I may call Rod tonight or tomorrow and ask for a little bit of a delay to the meeting because I don't want to do anything that gets in the way of this very important Supreme Court pick. So I don't want it competing and hurting the decision, one way or the other decision. Again, I want to hear what she has to say, but I don't want to do. So I may delay that. I'm going to see. I don't want to do anything that's going to conflict with that. But my preference would be to keep him and to let him finish up. You know, I call it a witch hunt, and it is a witch hunt. If you look at the FBI statements with Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page, if you look at all of the things that have gone on in the FBI, if you look at McCabe taking $700,000 from a Hillary Clinton PAC, essentially run by Terry McAuliffe, who's her best friend in the world, and he gives them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he's in charge of her campaign, and his wife is getting all of this money to run. She lost. To run. I mean, what's going on? If you look at the horrible statements, like, way to go, Page, great story you put into a newspaper, essentially, now we'll go and investigate that group. It's terrible. We have caught people doing things that are terrible. I would much prefer keeping Rod Rosenstein. Much prefer. Many people say I have the right to absolutely fire him. He said he did not say it. He said he does not believe that. And nobody in this room believes it. By the way, I deal with the people in this room. I was with Mike Pompeo before. We were dealing at a very high level with Japan. And I was saying things that nobody in the room even understood. And I said to him a long time ago, and I was right. He said, that's not the 25th Amendment that I'm looking at. I think I can say that from Mike.
So you don't think anyone in your administration has ever discussed using the 25th Amendment against you?
I don't think so. Oh, well, yeah, enemies, sure. You use
Within
anything
your
you can.
administration or your cabinet?
You use anything they can. They're not in love with me. They're not going to beat me in the election. They know that. They're not going to beat me. The people that I'm looking at are total lightweights. I dream of running against those people. Maybe I'll come up with somebody that's not. They're not going to beat me. I'm against what they want to do. I'm in favor of law enforcement. I'm in favor of safety and security and low taxes. I want low taxes. I want borders. We're getting another $1.6 billion in borders. I want borders. We've spent 3.2, and we're getting another 1.6, and then eventually we're getting the whole thing, and we'll complete the wall. They don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want the things that I have. Now, I must say, I know many of the Democrats. They'll say things and then wink at me. And again, it's the same old story. They'll say things. They don't mean it. It's politics. The reason they don't want me is because they want to run the show. They want it. It's power. It's whatever you want to call it. But what they've done here is a disgrace, a total disgrace. And what they do, I know it's sort of interesting. In one case, they say, he's a fascist. He's taking over the government. He's the most powerful president ever. He's a horrible human being. He wants to take over the entire government, and he's going to do it. We can't stop him. That didn't work. The next week, he said, he's incompetent. I said, well, wait a minute. In one case, I'm taking over the world. And in the other case, he's incompetent. They tried that for a week. That didn't work. Look, these are very dishonest people. These are con artists. And the press knows it, but the press doesn't write it. Wow, that's a lot of hands. That's a lot of... Steve, go ahead. He's a very high-quality person, this man, but he'll probably hit me with a bad one.
Why,
go ahead, give it to me. Give it to me, Steve. Reuters.
You're getting letters from Chairman Kim. Why do you need a second summit with the North Korean leader so soon? And what
he'd like it.
What would it be for?
So I've received 2 letters from Chairman Kim. At some point, I'll, give these letters. They're incredible letters. They're They're letters that are magnificent in the sense of his feeling for wanting to get this done. I really believe he wants to get it done. I may be wrong. I heard somebody on a certain network last night, I won't mention which one, say, why has President Trump given so much to North Korea? I said, wait a minute. I asked Sarah Huckabee, please call this person. I gave him nothing other than I met. What did I give him? I didn't do what Obama did, give him $1.8 billion in cash to get back 4 hostages. I got back our hostages. I never paid them anything. I haven't paid them 10 cents. But he wants to make a deal, and I'd like to make a deal. We actually have a very good relationship together, a lot different than the last time I was at the United Nations. That was a little bit rough. Don't forget, that time, they said, oh, Trump is saying these horrible things. He's going to get us into a war. You're going to have a war. If I wasn't elected, you'd be in a war. And President Obama essentially said the same thing. He was ready to go to war. You would have had a war and you would have lost millions, not thousands. You would have lost millions of people. Seoul has 30 million people, 40 miles and 30 miles from this very dangerous border. If I wasn't elected, you would have had a war. President Obama thought you had to go to war. You know how close he was to pressing the trigger for war? Millions of people. With me, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. We have a very good relationship. He likes me, I like him, we get along. He wrote me 2 of the most beautiful letters. When I showed one of the letters, just one, to Prime Minister Abe, he said, this is actually a groundbreaking letter. This is an incredible, this is a historic letter. And it is a historic letter. It's a beautiful piece of art. And I think we're going to make a deal. Will we make a deal, Steve? I don't really know. But I think we're going to. In the meantime, and I've said it, I don't want to bore you, no rockets, no missiles, no nuclear tests, for over a year. Well, you haven't seen. Before I got here, everybody in this room thought you were going to war. And then what happened, it was funny. They said he was terrible. He was so rough with Chairman Kim Jong-un. He was so rough, it's terrible, he's going to cause. Well, I had a great meeting with President Putin. And on that one, they said, he was too soft with President Putin. I had a great meeting with President. It lasted for 2 hours. We discussed everything, Ukraine, Syria, Israel and Israel's protection. We had a great meeting. They wanted me to end up in a boxing match. And you know what? If I was killer tough with President Putin, they would have said, he was too tough. You can't win with these people, but you just keep going. In the meantime, we're doing well. Go ahead.
So how long do you think it should take North Korea to denuclearize?
I don't know. I don't want to get into
estimates of 1 year.
Steve, I don't want to get into the time game. You know why? I told Mike Pompeo, I said, Mike, don't get into the time game. We stopped them. They're taking down plants. They're taking down a lot of different testing areas. They're going to take down some more. You'll be hearing about that very soon. I don't want to go ahead of myself, but you'll be hearing about it soon. They have no interest right now in testing nuclear. We had a case just about when I was coming into office, you'll remember it, where there was a massive, they thought it was an earthquake. A mountain moved over 1.5 inches. We're talking about mountains. North Korea is very mountainous, beautiful land, beautiful. This mountain actually shifted. It shifted. And somebody thought it was an earthquake. And then they found out, no, this was nuclear testing. Shifted a mountain. I'm talking about serious stuff, serious size. When I came in, and certainly before I came in, and even at the beginning of mine, because when I was having rhetorical contests, really, I guess you could call it, with Chairman Kim, which we both smile at now and we laugh at, but everybody thought that was a horrible thing. We've had many presidents who were unable to do anything at all with North Korea. We now have a good relationship. We have a good relationship. And most importantly, all of the things that you've been hearing about, the horror stories, in my opinion, they're gone. Now, could they start up again? Yes. I'm a deal guy. Could they start? Yeah. Could be that we don't work it out. I think, I have it right here. I think that what we've done behind the scenes, which nobody really knows about, and I don't blame you for not knowing about, personal letters, private letters, but saying they want to get it done. We know much more than the media for a change. much more. But if you saw what's going on behind the scenes, I think you'd be very impressed. We were a country going to war. I really believe that President Obama would admit that he said it's by far his biggest problem. When I sat with him prior to going into office, he said to me that's by far the biggest problem. And he said to me that he was very close to going into war. And millions of people, not, they say, oh, thousands of people. No, not thousands. Millions of people would have been killed. And that could have left, right next to China, you're right. That could have been a world war very easily. Right now, we're in a great position. I don't want to play the time game. I told Mike Pompeo, don't let them do that to you. I haven't given anything. And all of a sudden, we got back, it was a few weeks ago. I think we were back like 2.5 months from the summit, which was a great success. And people are screaming, what's taking so long? I said, oh, I get it. You got to understand the media. I've been dealing with the media all my life, too much. They're screaming, and I saw that. And our guys were, and not Mike, but our guys were being, oh, well, we're working as fast. I said, I got all the time in the world. I don't have to rush it. There's no, cessation of sanctions. We got the sanctions on. I didn't take any sanctions off. I did see a reporter last night, a guy I liked personally a lot, and he asked a question to President Moon of South Korea. He said, why did the president give so much? I didn't give anything. I gave nothing. What have I given? Other than some time. Yes, I flew to Singapore. We had a meeting. Now, giving would be if I took the sanctions off. I didn't want to do, if you asked General Mattis for 1.5 years, I said, why don't we stop these ridiculous, in my opinion, the military games. I call them the military games. If I told you how much those games cost, and frankly, I told South Korea, you should be paying for these games. We pay for them. They say, well, we fly the planes in from a short distance away. I said, where is that? Guam. Oh, huh. How long a trip is that? 7 hours. Oh, great. We're flying these massive bombers and everything. I've wanted to stop this for a long time. I consider that an asset. But we're saving, by the way, just for the taxpayer, we're saving a fortune. And if we need them, we can start them up immediately. If I think we need them, I'll start them before the generals will start them. The fact is, this reporter said that. I said, what have we done? I haven't given anything. And we're really onto the cusp. I think we're really going to do something that's going to be very important. But we're not playing the time game. If it takes 2 years, 3 years, or 5 months, doesn't matter. There's no nuclear testing, and there's no testing of rockets. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Go ahead, please. This is the one that was nodding with every nice thing I said, so watch this question.
It's a habit of mine. Hannah Thomas-Peter from Sky
You're with who?
Hannah Thomas-Peter from Sky News.
Okay, good, Sky News.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Congratulations on the purchase.
Nothing to do with me.
I hope you benefited. Go ahead.
Are you at all concerned at the message that has been being sent to the women who are watching this when you use language like con job in relation to allegations
I've used
of
much
sexual
worse
assault?
language in my life than con job. That's like probably the nicest phrase I've ever used. I mean, con job. It is. It's a con job. You know, confidence. It's a confidence job, but they show. It's a con job by the Democrats. They know it.
What about the message that's being
They
sent
did the
to
same
women
thing
who
with
are
the
watching?
Russia investigation. They tried to convince people that I had something to do with Russia. There was no collusion. Think of it. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm in Michigan. I say, gee, we're not doing well. I won both those states. We're not doing well. Let me call the Russians to help. Does anybody really believe that? It's a con job. And I watch these guys, little Adam Schiff and all of the guys. He takes a call from a Russian who turned out to be a faker. You know, he was a comedian or something. This is so-and-so calling for... He took the call. Why is he taking a call from a Russian? Senator Warner took a call from a Russian. He was a comedian or something, but he said, we have pictures of President Trump. Whoa, where can I get them? If we ever did that, it would be like a big deal. Yeah, it's a con job, and it's not a bad term. It's not a bad term at all.
Are you worried?
I'll tell you one thing I can say. I've had a lot of people talking about this to me with respect to what's happening, because it's a horrible precedent. I'm going to have to get other judges and other Supreme Court judges, possibly. I could have a lot of Supreme Court judges, more than 2. And when I called up Brett Kavanaugh, spoke to him and his family, and told them that I chose them, they were so happy and so honored. It was as though, the biggest thing that's ever happened, and I understand that. U.S. Supreme Court. I don't want to be in a position where people say, no thanks, I don't want to, I spoke to somebody 38 years ago and it may not be good. We have a country to run. We want the best talent in the world. But I'll tell you this, the people that have complained to me about it the most, about what's happening, are women. Women are very angry. I got 52% with women. Everyone said this couldn't happen, 52%. Women are so angry. And I frankly think that they like what the Republicans are doing, but I think they would have liked to have seen it go a lot faster. But give them their day in court. Let her have her day in court. Let somebody else have a day in court. But the ones that I find, I have men that don't like it, but I have women that are incensed at what's going on. I've always said women are smarter than men. I've said that a lot, and I mean it. But women are incensed at what's going on. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead in the back. Who are you, or where are you from?
Me?
Yeah, you. Guy looks like he's shocked. This is going to be not good.
It's going to be good,
The guy
sir.
looks totally stunned. Have you ever been picked before for a question?
Yes, sir, but not from President of the United States.
Go ahead, give me a question.
Thank you very much. My name is Majid Gili from Rudao Media Network. I want to, sir, ask you, you always talk about...
Excuse me, you said where? From where?
Rudao Media Network from Kurdistan region, north of Iraq. I'm a Kurd.
Good. Good.
Sir,
great people.
Thank you, sir.
Great
Mr.
people.
Mr. President,
Thank you. Are you a Kurd?
Mr. President.
Good. They're
Mr.
great people. They're great fighters. I like them a lot. Let's go. I like this question
Mr. President,
so far.
you always say you support your allies. Kurds right now, after the defeat of ISIS, are under a lot of pressure in Syria and in Iraq by many adversaries.
It's true.
What will you do to elevate their position, to support them, in order after they help the United States to defeat ISIS?
Well, we are helping them a lot, and we've been very friendly with them. And as you know, we've fought side by side. And we have defeated ISIS, essentially, a very short while ago in the Middle East. And we did it with a lot of help from the Kurds. And they're great fighters. Some people are great fighters, and some people aren't. The Kurds are great fighters, and they're great, great people. And we're discussing that situation exactly right now.
What will you do to support them, sir?
Well, I'm just telling you, we're going to be discussing that situation. We have already started discussing that situation, but we have had tremendous support from the Kurds in defeating ISIS.
And about Syria, sir, in your speech you did not mention...
Yes. Go. Uh-oh. You don't need it.
Mr. President, Susan Lee from Fox Business. Did you reject a one-on-one meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Because his tariffs are too high and he doesn't seem to want to move, and I've told him forget about it. And frankly, we're thinking about just taxing cars coming in from Canada. That's the mother lode. That's the big one. We're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much. They've taken advantage. I love Canada, by the way. I have so many friends. I have everybody, so many friends. But that has nothing to do with this. I'm representing the United States. Mexico was totally, they were great. By the way, the new president has been great. The deal is done. Now it has to go through Congress, and a lot of things have to happen. But we've done. Bob Lighthizer, who's here someplace. Where's Bob? Bob Lighthizer has done a great job of negotiating.
All right, that is the president at his news conference in New York. A lot of questions, obviously, about Judge Kavanaugh. We will have full, complete analysis coverage. This is news you're not going to get anywhere else because the media is so abusively corrupt and biased. It is probably the worst time for media in the history of this country. I've never seen it so bad. All right, our lineup tonight, we're going to meet Judge Kavanaugh's girlfriend at the time of these allegations. The great one, Mark Levin. Sarah Carter will join us. Congressman Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, John Solomon, and we will give you the news and information you don't have. Hannity tonight, 9 Eastern on Fox, reporting from D.C. Let not your heart be troubled. We will be back here tomorrow. The big hearings. Yep, Judge Kavanaugh and his first accuser, Professor Ford. We'll see you tonight at 9 back here from D.C. tomorrow.